Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser, and you can find me everywhere that you get your social media at Hawk Blogger. And yesterday, you really could find me anywhere you get your social media or any of your sports news. It was quite a day yesterday. Not the day I expected when I woke up. It was a day I was looking forward to, but it certainly turned into something a little bit more and a little bit different, and I'm going to walk you through it. If you didn't know, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, congratulations. You are somebody that is able to stay out of the social media world and sports talk and all those things. But I will fill you all in on what it's like to be in the middle of a viral moment in just a second. I will also today be doing actual Seahawks stuff, which is what I'm comfortable focusing on. And there was a lot to go through from yesterday at the VMAC. I won't be able to get through all of it. I'm going to choose to focus on the John Schneider impromptu press conference that we had yesterday. I'm going to play some clips from that. I'm going to talk to you about what I think about those clips and what we heard from John Schneider. And if we have time, reflect on some of the in my mind, like attempts to control the narrative of what's going on among the fan base that I'm confused by it at most and disagree with, I guess, at least. But before I do, 10 days ago, I thanked everybody for getting us to 15,000 subscribers on the channel. Today, 10 days later, I'm doing this. So that's crazy, guys. That's crazy that 10 days later, we're at 16,000 subscribers. And believe it or not, this was not driven by this viral experience yesterday. This all happened. We got to 16,000 subscribers before. This all came from free agent coverage, and I think primarily the free agency coverage. And so it's really cool. It's cool to have a community grow. I'll admit, I was talking with my wife, Rachel, this morning. It's a weird thing. Like, I've never had an issue with public speaking. I've never had an issue with speaking up in important meetings or, whatever the situation, or being in front of the camera or not. It's like, I don't say that as a thing about I'm bragging. It's never been a thing that's bothered me. But as the audience has grown, I think it started to get in my head just a little bit. I'm like, well, I honestly, when I started the blog 18, 19 years ago, for a while, it was just me and a couple of people just talking about the Seahawks. And I was pretty comfortable with that because all I need is people that obsess about this team, and I'm pretty happy. But now people are listening at a scale that's maybe a little different than it has been for a while. Back during the Super Bowl days, I got stuff in with the Bill Simmons podcast and ESPN and stuff in the Seattle Times. So I'd gone through it there, but it was always just this side thing. So now it's this thing I do every day, and it is a little daunting at times, to come up with something each and every day. It's been 354 straight days of doing this show, and I'm looking forward to finding ways to celebrate 365 with you all next week. But with that in mind, let me take a moment. Besides thanking you all for getting the channel to 16,000 subscribers, give the show a like, click subscribe. Really, really appreciate it. Let's get to 17, 18. Let's get to 50, whatever it is. Let's see how big we can make this. Let's see how, this is an experiment to see how good of a community we can grow. It's not just the size, it's the quality, and people treating each other well in chat and in other places. And if they don't, they're not part of the community. So we'll see. We'll see how far this goes. I have no idea. So let me talk to you about yesterday. If you don't know, first of all, the Seahawks had scheduled a press conference for 1:00. Didn't know what it was for. They didn't make that clear. I assumed they were going to introduce Sam Darnold and DeMarcus Lawrence. That was my assumption. Didn't know. Now, keep in mind, this is my first year covering the team with credentials. So like all this stuff is pretty new to me. I'm getting better at anticipating and learning. I asked the guys in the press room, they helped me learn. But one of the things that I really chose not to do last year is ask for much from the PR team. Like I felt like the fact that they were letting me go to press conference, the fact that they were letting me in the press box, I could travel with the team, all those things, that was enough for me in year one. But now that I've kind of, I think, earned a little bit of trust that I'm not going to be some idiotic fanboy that goes in there and asks like the most stupid questions or says really things or is super reactionary or whatever, that I'm going to generally try to do a good job. I think that this year I want to step it up a little bit. I want to ask for a little bit more from them, and it'll help me cover them a little bit better. So I woke up yesterday morning, and the way that it's supposed to work is you're supposed to put in your media request the day before. So the night before I should have sent them, but it didn't occur to me. I was like, I'm just not used to asking for things. And the morning came, like for me, like 4 in the morning whenever I wake up, and I sent a text to the Seahawks PR staff saying, and I think I sent an email. I should send an email to the Seahawks PR staff saying, hey, I'd like to get a chance to speak to DeMarcus or Sam or one of those folks that you're introducing. I'll go live from the VMAC. And the way that this also works is you put that email out, and generally you're not going to hear back for a while. Like responding to the reporters is not a priority, but I did get back a text from someone on the PR staff by, when was it? I'll tell you exactly, because I want to give you timelines of how this kind of came to be. So at 9:15 in the morning, I get back a text saying, hey, if you can be there by 11:30, then we'll grab you somebody. I was like, sweet, I can do that. So my plan was I did my show. I was going to work out, but I was like, all right, I don't have time for that. Gonna get ready, gonna head to the VMAC, get everything packed up, all my equipment, get to the VMAC, park, walk in. I'm there at like 11:15, whenever it is. Walk into the media room, and I start getting my stuff assembled to be ready to do this interview. And this is the first time I'm going to have gone live in one of these player interviews. Generally, I always record them and then post them later, but I wanted to go live. And so, I was trying to have my laptop and all this other stuff. I won't get you into all the technical stuff, but I had to get that all ready, and I was a little stressed about that. And 11:30 comes. Initially, I set the live to go live at 11:30. That was stupid because that was not when it was going to happen. I let PR know that I was there. They're like, hey, we'll let you know. Schedules are fluid. Not sure when this is going to happen. I was like, no problem. Then, I see Sam Darnold walk in to talk to sports radio. And actually, no, sorry, that is totally wrong. I see Josh Jones, the new tackle, walk in to talk to sports radio. Then we go out in the hallway, we do an interview with him. So now it's like 12 o'clock, and like 1 o'clock is when the press conference is. So I text again. I was like, is this going to happen? Didn't seem like it was going to happen. And we kind of wait and wait. And then I believe, did we talk to MVS before? We talked to MVS before or after? I think that was after. So get all the way to 1 o'clock. It's time for the press conference. So I set up, again, totally different setup, get set up to do that. And you walk into the media, like the team room where they do these press conferences, and all the employees are there. It's totally, I'm like, what is going on? It's a full house. Like usually it's just the reporters, the people that record the stuff, but everybody was there. It was like definitely a different vibe. And there's cheering when Sam walks in, and they do the Sam Darnold thing. Talk about that another day. I'm not going to go into detail on that one. So now I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get Sam Darnold at this point. And I've been resetting the time for when this live is going to happen. Not even really sure it's ever going to happen. And again, I'm low in the pecking order. You know, sports radio, Seattle Sports Radio, what is it? 97.3. I can't remember exactly what it is. But anyway, they have a deal with the Seahawks. They're the flagship radio station. They get first dibs on everybody. The other KJR gets, next. There's, Q13 Fox. There's like a bunch of like legitimate brands that I am not yet that get dibs. So I'm kind of continuing to kind of reset it. And I just reached back out to PR and they're like, okay, it's not going to happen with Sam, but we're going to get you DeMarcus Lawrence. And I'm like, cool, that's great. And so then we do the Marquez Valdez Scantling interview, another small one, which was a great interview, by the way. That's also available on the channel. Highly recommend you check it out. We'll talk about that another day. And so that I'm like different equipment running around. And then I get this text as we're getting ready for a John Schneider press conference. And I don't know when the John Schneider press conference is going to be. They don't tell you specifically. So we're all hanging out in the hallway. And I get a note from PR saying, in 20 minutes, you're going to talk to DeMarcus Lawrence. And I'm like, shit. This happens where they might put you in a situation where you have to make a Sophie's choice, where like either you talk to John Schneider with the rest of the media or you get your exclusive interview with DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, shoot. All right. So I go get my equipment. So it's sitting next to me in my backpack in the hallway, ready to go. And I'm just praying that John Schneider comes down the stairs and does his press conference in enough time that I'm then able to still do the DeMarcus Lawrence interview. And I was going to have to do the DeMarcus thing no matter what. Like, once you commit, you're not going to bail on the interview. So I was like, I really don't want to miss this John Schneider interview. Anyway, so we do the John Schneider press conference. That video is also up. I'm going to play you clips from that later in this show. There's some amazing stuff in there, I think, that is pretty insightful. But get through that. And then I was told 5 minutes. DeMarcus Lawrence will be there. So I go, can I go set up? And I go into the IPF, which is the indoor practice facility. And in the IPF, I'm like getting set up, getting the tripod, getting the camera, connecting it to the laptop, doing the whole thing. And because I haven't done live before, I'm like making sure the internet's decent enough. I got to get my shot set up so that when DeMarcus walks in, that he can just walk to a spot and that we're not like figuring out if he's in frame. Have to make sure that the mic's working, all that kind of stuff. So you guys kind of caught up from there. You can watch the live if you didn't see the full interview. It's up there. And then he walks in and he's about to do an interview, I think with like CBS, but I'm not sure which station it was, but they weren't quite ready. So he comes over to do mine. And we have a good time. Like, he's a good guy. I think he's a great get for the Seahawks, a great get for this locker room. And I finished the interview with this question. You spent all this time in Dallas. You also spent time in Boise. What's the difference for you beating up here? How much time are you going to be up here versus down in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, the main difference, as you can see, is it's cold.
It is cold. People don't feel that, but it's cold.
Yeah, got to keep my jacket on up
here.
Yeah. Definitely love the atmosphere. Change the scenery is always good. But Dallas is my home. I made my home there. My family lives there. I'm forever going to be there. But I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
We're here. DeMarcus Lawrence, welcome to the Seahawks. Thanks for joining us. So that happened. And you saw it in his face. He wanted to make sure I understood what he was saying. I was like, no, I get it, dude. I know exactly what you are saying. And I was sitting there thinking, I know, we all know the Cowboys get so much coverage on sports. I like at ESPN. It's like, it's maddening. Like they haven't even been good and they get all this coverage. And I was like, this is going to be a thing. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, I had already, because I thought I was going to be home in time to get my son off the bus at 3 o'clock. I'd blown through that. Thankfully, my wife agreed to come. She was already going to come home from work, so she was there and covered fine. But I wanted to get home, and I agreed with Dave Softy Mahler to be on the radio at 4 o'clock. It was 3:30, like 3:40, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. I checked traffic. I'm like, I'm gonna run. I'm going to get back, pack up my bag, and then I'm gonna get home and take the interview from home. So it's like 3:40. Drive back from the VMAC. I get to my house at like 3:55. By that point, I had messages already from multiple people saying, "What's going on with this?" And "Did you see this?" And I was like, I got to get on the radio with Softy. So I do my Softy hit and I get off at like 4:15, 4:20. By that point, Bleacher Report, I think Underdog Football, these accounts with pretty massive reach had retweeted a clip of that interview and that specific thing, that statement. And so I'm like, all right, well, of course they're not linking to the interview. I've got to get this up so that, I get some benefit from having done this interview. So I start replying to all these tweets as hopefully high in the list of replies that has the link to the full interview. So I'm like whack-a-moling, like as they keep popping up, like if it's a big enough account, I try to reply to it and get a link to the actual interview. Meanwhile, more and more, I start getting these requests. So the first request I think came from, they started coming in email. They started coming like all over the place. And I got from ESPN, from the NFL Network was next. And then Bleacher Report, a few other places just started asking. I was like, I don't know what to do here. Like, am I supposed to ask for money? Like, or do they just let them play it out of courtesy because it'll get some attention? I was like, you know what? I'm not going to ask for money. They're not going to give me money probably. It's not that big of a deal. And I don't know that that's actually even the smartest thing to do. I was like, I'm going to just ask that they, one, mention that the full interview can be found on youtube.com/hawkblogger, and two, that they overlay the link to my channel on the video when it's playing on air. And got back from ESPN, like that they can do the overlay, but they can't guarantee that the hosts are going to mention that they can see the full interview. And I was like, fine, that's good enough. Bleacher Report, I told them the same thing, and they're like, sorry, we can't link to external things. And I'm like, then fine, you don't have my permission. I would be shocked if they don't use it anyway. Like, I think those people just take your stuff and they do whatever they want with it. But, I was like, all right, if you can't like link to the source of the content that you're using to make money, then screw you. You like, come on. And NFL Network agreed. And then Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio published without referencing the source. And then when he did, he linked it to, some account that just was the source of the clip of the video, not actually me. And by the way, the person who clipped the video has like over 10,000 likes or whatever on that tweet because it got pulled into a quote tweet from Micah Parsons, who responded to it. And I'm not going to read it all to you because you guys have, I'm sure, seen it by now. Basically calling DeMarcus Lawrence a clown and for saying that. And DeMarcus Lawrence then responds back saying like, if you spent less time tweeting and more time, winning, maybe he'd still be there. And so I'm honestly looking at it, just trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I'm doing at least the most that I can with this moment, because they don't come around that often. And uh, meanwhile, I didn't get my workout in the morning. And right now, I'm very committed to get my workout in. So I start doing my workout, and I'm literally like, I have my phone next to me, and it's just like whack-a-mole. I start working out, and then I start like responding to a request, start working out, see something else. My workout took forever, but I did get through it. And I was told that it was probably going to be on Sports Center. So then it leads off Sports Center, which was awesome and cool. I mean, I grew up watching Sports Center. I'll admit I don't really watch it at all anymore, but it was cool to see that. Wild to see that clip show up there. NFL Network, I think, was going to use it for Good Morning Football. I've recorded it, but I haven't watched. I think ESPN, I was pretty sure they're going to use it for First Take with Stephen A. I just got a request from Stephen A's production assistant for his show that he wants to use it. So it's kind of gone everywhere. It's gone everywhere. And it's been pretty shocking. So, sorry, I'm just looking because someone said there was some news, but there isn't yet. So, end of the day, I mean, what does this mean? Like, I will just acknowledge, I'm not the story, but I know for all of you that have been with me on this journey, you're kind of wanting to get behind the scenes of what this is all like, and I want to try to give that to you as well. I'll just say, like the video, the actual interview, it hasn't even reached 10,000 views yet. So the original clip from that guy on Twitter who, ripped off the clip, I think he's gotten probably as much or more benefit out of this than I have. And it is a little, I'll admit that bugs me a bit that, just hitting record on your phone or whatever and not being the person that spends the money on the equipment, not being the person that's built the relationships, not being the person that, managed childcare to make this happen and get down there and actually ask questions that ultimately had him comfortable in a place to kind of say what he said in that moment. That's a little bit annoying. It is. And that's why I think a lot of folks that do this and put the work in and put the investment in get frustrated with the aggregators who just honestly rip off your work and they get the engagement for it. I'm not going to be like complaining a bunch about that because it just is like, why are you going to try to scream into the wind about like, this is just the way things work, deal with it, but as of yet, I don't know that I've gotten that much benefit from that other than the experience. And I don't discount that because that was fun yesterday. That was fun. I wouldn't want that to be my everyday. And you get this little glimpse, like a very tiny glimpse of what it's like for these players, coaches, general managers, celebrities, whatever, that are in the limelight. It was not about me. So I'm not saying that, but you get this glimpse where I did get a lot of people replying to me saying, man, I love your work. Watched your stuff since the beginning. You're doing great stuff. Like a lot of kudos. And that feels good. That feels good. But I also know inherently that I could say something on this show, and those same people would be absolutely ripping me to shreds. And they would be like talking behind my back. They would be posting memes. They would be like tearing me up. So there's this, like Reek Woolen's talked about this a lot, where his rookie year, he was more like enjoying that and engaged, partially because he was the belle of the ball. He was one of, if not the best rookie corners in the NFL that year. And then he struggled a little bit in his second year and people turned on him. And so he really felt that. And I think it's really changed the way he engages with social media and engaged with fans. he's not alone, but that's just a recent example. And so I in the middle of that storm, it was fun to go through. It was nice and validating to get some positive feedback. I think it was hilarious in a sense that NFL Network and NFL.com is linking to Hawk Blogger. I think they all feel kind of odd having to reference Hawk Blogger. The Athletic, I will give them kudos. The NFL Network, ESPN, these are all big boys, and they could have just rolled over me and done whatever they want, because I'm not gonna hire a lawyer. I'm not gonna go after them, and they could just do whatever they want, really. They didn't, and they put my channel on there. They linked to stuff. They did things the right way, and that's probably my biggest takeaway is, man, I appreciate that, because a lot of people that have a lot less money and a lot less to make from this did a lot less than that. And so you see me keep looking, because I'm checking. I'm always watching the news feed, at least during this week and during free agency, to see if anything comes up. But yeah, it was fun, and it's not over yet. I literally, as I was getting ready for this show, Rachel calls me and she's like, "Brian, come here." And I'm like, "Okay." I walk in. She's like, "I turned on the TV and you're on the TV." It was turned on to ESPN, and she's like, "They're talking about you. They're talking about this story." So it's surreal. It's surreal. And I definitely got some reach outs from good friends and past acquaintances and all that kind of stuff. So if someone's saying what quote got them all excited, well, I'll play it one more time for you. All right, I'll play it one more time. And honestly, if you haven't heard it yet, you're gonna. So this was the answer to a question about Seattle and Dallas being home, from DeMarcus Lawrence.
I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
We here. That was the quote. I know for sure we're not going to win a Super Bowl here and there. And he's talking about Dallas, shot across the bow. And I'll also say it's been kind of interesting to watch the Cowboys fans' reactions to that, which has been a lot of them are like, "Hey, you're not going to win a Super Bowl in Seattle either. What are you thinking?" Which completely misses DeMarcus's point. He was not. I don't think that was about hyping up the Seahawks. That was much more about Cowboys are going nowhere. And so then the other, I would say at least half, it's almost 50-50 of the responses have been, he's just saying what everyone already knows. Like, he's speaking the truth. And Cowboys fans are kind of in a world of hurt. They were super, like, they signed their franchise quarterback Dak to a big deal last year. They kept CeeDee Lamb, and fan engagement there was bad. Like, this is one of the most popular teams in the NFL, and fans were like super down on the Cowboys last year. And it turned out they were right. It was not a good year for the Cowboys. And this is a team, they're like the 49ers. They have not won a Super Bowl. They haven't been to a Super Bowl in a long time. Like, they're worse in that case. They haven't been to one, but they have not won one since the 90s. So I see somebody saying, Saban Senate Studio says, "Can you report the guy's video for plagiarism?" Like, I don't think there's a place you can report for plagiarism. And you know what? I don't have time or interest to fight the power. Like, my life philosophy has been for a long time, and my former employees will cringe or smile when I say this. My life philosophy has been about that life is like a river. It's constantly flowing, and sometimes faster, sometimes slower. It takes twists and turns, and you spend, like, when I was younger, I spent a lot of my life trying to control the flow. Like, slow down, I'm not ready for that yet. Like, I'm going to keep you, or I'm going to try to keep this from happening, or I'm going to try to run as fast as I can to keep up with how fast things are moving. And I realized it's like neither one of those philosophies worked. So in my mind, I started just taking a different path. And what I thought of is I talk about rocks in the river. I decide the things in my life that are immovable, that I'm going to make everything else flow around. So that could be, I'm going to be there for dinner with my kids, like, or my family every night. And it doesn't matter if my CEO needs a meeting with me. This is an unbreakable thing. I'm going to make sure that there's a boundary here. And so I kind of choose which are my rocks, and I place them in the river, and the river flows as fast as it's going to flow or as slow as it's going to flow. But I can control those specific things that are going to be fixtures in my life. And that's worked really well for me. It's let me to let go of a lot of crap that I can't control and that I don't care about. And it's also helped me to really be clear about the things that do matter to me and that I'm not going to bend on. And in this kind of situation, getting the most credit for this, I don't really care. I mean, it would be nice, but the world's going to do what the world's going to do. So I am more just going to enjoy the ride and go back to doing what I do, which is talk Seahawks obsessively all the time. And I'll say, like, it's pretty fun that we have a player on the team. A sub story here is Seahawks got a little bit of flavor on the team. DeMarcus Lawrence, in his first day, I think did something that was more engaging and interesting than maybe anyone on the team did all of last year. I'm interested to see what that's going to look like over the course of a season. I'm interested to see what his personality is going to be like. I'm interested to see what kind of motivation he's going to feel to prove what he has to offer after, really being kicked to the curb by the Cowboys. So, yeah, there's a lot more there. There's actually some really cool things in that interview. I'm not going to play those because I actually want to spend the balance of the time talking about John Schneider and talking about the press conference we had with him yesterday, some of the answers we got from him yesterday. By the way, this video is up on my channel. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once. And I just lost what I was trying to do there. All right, hold on one second. There it is. Okay, so this next piece that I wanted to talk about is John Schneider basically answering questions about what's happened in free agency this week. And there were some really, really big moments in this press conference. So I'm going to play those for you just a second here. Make sure that you give the show a like, click subscribe. As I said, we're over 16,000 subscribers. Love that. I see that we've got some super chats. So let me get to these real quick, and then we'll get to the John Schneider thing because it might be on totally different topics. So first one here comes from Amy Holmes, one of my favorite members of the channel, who's also a moderator and does great work there. Says, congrats on the growth, Brian. You've made for a fantastic offseason. I'm so happy to hear this. I've heard this from a few people. Offseason's been pretty fun, right? So I like the offseason. You can kind of lose on a free agent, but you can't really lose a game, and it doesn't feel quite the same way as when you lose a game, the finality of that. So I like the offseason. I'm glad people are enjoying it with me. Noah Berman has gifted 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Appreciate this, Noah. Adding more great folks to the community. And now we got so many subscribers. All you got to do to get one of these, make sure you turn gifting on your YouTube account. If you don't know how to do that, just Google it. And then all you got to do is like the show, subscribe, watch it, and YouTube will figure out who it wants to give those free subscriptions to, those free memberships. Gingerbread Man says, I really appreciate your content. Man, that's so nice of you. Thank you for spending some money just to let me know. I really do appreciate that. Ian Groff says, PA Seahawks fan here. Congrats on all your success with this podcast so far and your recent spotlight. Keep up the great work. That is really nice of you, Ian. Thank you for saying that. And good morning to you. Or I guess it's probably, it's still morning for you. Luke Allen says, happy seeing you get some well-deserved credit. Thank you, Luke. That is nice. Feels good. Gingerbread Man back again says, Witherspoon's energy added to Lawrence's energy is going to be popping. I think that's right. I think that man, like the best defenses have swagger. Like they just do. I'm probably supposed to say swag, but I'm like old man and probably doesn't come across very well when I say that. But in any event, like, yeah, you want that. And I think that he is going to add to that. He's not looking. I asked him yesterday, one of the questions was, is there something you want to prove? And he's like, or that people are sleeping on. And he's like, if they're sleeping, I'm going to wake them up, I think was his quote. And I think that's great, man. I think it's great. And it's great to have it in an edge rusher. It's great to have it in a physical player that plays the run as well as he does. So yeah, loved it. All right. So let's get into this next bit, folks. Want to play some John Schneider sound for you. And in order to do that, I've got to pull up the video. So, you guys would be amazed by the amount of windows I've got open while doing this show. All right. So this is John Schneider talking about, I think we'll do this. This is John Schneider talking about a number of topics, but this first one was, what's the story with Geno Smith? What happened there? And here's what John Schneider had to say.
Transpired.
Sure. We made an offer to Geno, tried to extend him. It became apparent that we weren't going to be able to get a deal done. Yeah, it wasn't like a very long negotiation.
Yep.
And so as a staff, we had to be prepared to pivot. So we had sat down with the offensive staff, and obviously the personnel guys were on it before anyway, but always having a contingency plan and having to pivot. So we had several guys we were interested in, made the trade, and were able to get the guy at the top of the list. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, to be able to get Sam, that's a pretty darn good.
So that was John talking about Geno. And the thing I want to focus on there, if you didn't hear it, was one, and see it. I think it's important to see it too. Even the face John's making right now, I've seen this guy over the years. I've seen him throughout this last season. And he looked pretty haggard. Like he looked like it's been a rough week. This was not look, they just signed a new quarterback and introduced him, and they signed DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, these are pretty big moves. And on another day, maybe that would be a big celebratory day. Didn't feel like it. So people that I think believe that John doesn't like Geno, didn't want Geno, was trying to rebuild, like all these narratives that are out there, I think are way off. And we can talk about, and I will talk about, like, why that's John bears some responsibility in the fact that they've gotten to this point. And what I heard in that and what you heard in that was, you know what? It wasn't a very long negotiation. And there was another clip that I'll play for you really quickly. Let me get it queued up, where he talks about exactly that Greg Bell had asked, was there a back and forth here? Did you expect there to be a back and forth? And here was what John said about that.
There was no back and forth coming. So that's what became pretty evident that we should trade him to the Raiders.
How surprising was that?
No, you did not ask him to. Thank you.
I'm sorry. How surprising was that from the history you have with him that there was no back and forth at all?
Surprising. It's just part of the business, part of the negotiation, and I don't know. It was just, I don't know if it's surprising or not. It's just reality.
You know that.
So what John's saying there, and if you saw his facial expression again, like there was no back and forth coming. So this notion that, I mean, they made an offer, and now Brady Henderson has reported it was in the neighborhood of $40 million. Bob Condotta has said it's between 40 and 45. So Albert Breer at one point said 35 million, but now we've got two local folks saying it's 40 to 45. And then you see the response. Let's say it was 35, just for the sake of things. If Geno's side of the negotiations weren't even coming back with another offer, and he could tell that they just didn't want this to work out, then again, this isn't about lowballing. This isn't about, like, this is very standard in any negotiation. Like, what team has ever just their first offer has been their best offer? Like, that's not how it works. So is a normal state of events for a team to present an offer, generally probably not their highest offer, and for there to be a back and forth. And John was saying in this, he was surprised that there wasn't like a negotiation, that they didn't have more of a conversation. And you could see, like, he talks about it. I'll play a clip in a little bit about how it's hurtful. Like you take it personally that Geno Smith didn't want to be here. Also important, it might have been missed in this clip, Michael Sean Dugar in there asked, did Geno ask to be traded? And John said no, he did not ask to be traded. So that's new news, because it had been reported that he requested a trade. False. He did not request a trade. And one of the things I'll throw out there, I went back and forth with some folks in my Real Hawk Talk crew yesterday about this, but there's a notion of like, okay, well, maybe Brady and Bob Condotta are getting these sources from like team sources that are spinning it to make the team look better or Geno look worse or whatever. That's all possible. But I'd be really cautious when you have, this isn't a source. This is the GM publicly saying Geno didn't ask to be traded. They did not counteroffer. That's not rumor anymore. Now, Geno's camp can come out and say, hey, we did counter and they didn't, like, they can get into that, but that hasn't happened yet. So anyone with the conjecture out there of like, oh, the Seahawks lowballed him and insulted him, I think that's a bunch of shit. I really do. I think that is an agenda-driven perspective, and it's not one person. People saw that I responded to a Matty Brown thread yesterday about this. Bob also responded to that thread. I know Griff Sturgeon has kind of been tweeting about this and having his perspectives. A bunch of people have, like I said, people in my own Real Hawk Talk crew have their perspectives. I just feel very strongly that, like, people making up what could be true when you have the people that were involved, not a source, not secondhand, telling you what happened, is just like dangerous. Like that's like where distrust of news in general comes from. And I happen to believe that it's really important that there's some journalistic integrity that's respected, and also that there is, when people tell you something, unless they like have consistently unless they've given you reason to think that they are not telling the truth, or more importantly, unless there's another person who was involved, not secondhand, not a source, but involved, says, no, this is what happened, I don't think you have a leg to stand on to really say something else was the story. This is the story. He did not request a trade. He did not make a counteroffer. Geno Smith did not want to be here. Now, I will talk in a little bit about why that could be. Well, actually, I'll do it right now. I think if you want to like twist this around to like point the finger at John Schneider or point the finger at the Seahawks and say it's not about Geno Smith not wanting to be here, it's not that hard. It is, look back to last year. look back to when they were talking publicly about Drew Lock more than they were talking about Geno Smith. Quotes like, he's our quarterback for now and quarterback until he's not. You know, look back to when Geno Smith requested an extension during the training camp last year and John Schneider said no. And you could say, well, that was bad choice, but John, as a rule, the Seahawks do not negotiate extensions until there's only 1 year left on a deal. You can criticize that, saying, hey, this is your quarterback, you should make an exception. And those are all valid things. I think you can also criticize Mike Macdonald. You could say, if this was really something that was growing, that was great and, you know, going in the direction that everybody wanted, then Geno wouldn't want to go somewhere else. Those are all things that you could like come up and say are criticisms of the organization. This other stuff I feel like falls way short of that. All right, so there's a lot more. So let's get to the DK, because this plays right into that last thing I was just talking about. Let's talk about the DK Metcalf situation and what happened here. And I want you to pay attention as I play this for you, not just to what John Schneider says, but pay attention to his facial expressions. Pay attention to the time it takes him to kind of gather his thoughts on answering what happened on the DK Metcalf trade.
As a surprise, I don't know if it was, there was discussions, DK and I were having a lot of personal discussions. I thought we could fix it, handle it, whatever it was. And at the end of the day, it was a no, and he wanted to be traded. So we pivoted and moved forward.
What kind of leader?
So I'll react to that in a second. Some news just from Adam Schefter that free agent guard Tevin Jenkins is going to visit the Seahawks on Monday. So Tevin Jenkins will visit the Seahawks on Monday. This is a guy that we've talked a lot about, one of the better guards available, but there's been question marks about whether Tevin Jenkins will play through injury, whether he loves football enough to be the guy. I think interesting to note. This was a guy that Bob Condotta, I got to get that right. Bob Condotta reported that would not be on the list. The fact that he is on the list is an example of where, you can't just assume every one of these reports is exactly right. So that's the case. We'll see what happens on Monday. So that's coming from Adam Schefter. He will visit the Seahawks on Monday. All right. So back to that clip about DK Metcalf. Did you see how long it took John Schneider to kind of gather his thoughts and decide how he wanted to answer that question? And then did you see how painful the words were for him? It was not easy for him to answer that question and he wasn't happy to be answering that question. If this was something that he wanted, the whole approach to that would have been different. He would have been explaining why it made sense, why it's not. In both of these cases, his body language, his tone, his whole energy this was not what he wanted. And I think that speaks volumes. The fact that I can't remember, I'm going to play this a little bit longer because I can't remember if there's more to it than that. So let me pull it back up here.
We want guys that want to be here. You know what I mean? We want guys that believe in what we're doing, and you'd have to ask him for one reason or another. We just wanted to move on and get a fresh start.
What kind of?
Let's play that again.
pivoted and moved forward.
What kind of leader?
We want guys that want to be here. You know what I mean? We want guys that believe in what we're doing, and you'd have to ask him for one reason or another. It was we just wanted to move on and get a fresh start.
That is a pissed off John Schneider. That facial expression, let's play that one more time. We'll start here. It's a great freeze frame. Sorry for that, John, but not happy.
We pivoted and moved forward.
What kind of leader?
We want guys that want to be here. You know what I mean? We want guys that believe in what we're doing, and you'd have to ask him for one reason or another. It was we just wanted to move on and get a fresh start.
As they say, it's written all over his face, you know? And John Schneider, there's a lot of pressure on him. He knows it, and I think I think it's landed. I think he's feeling it this year more than he felt it last year. And this is the direction that he is taking the organization by bringing in Mike McDonald, by moving on from Pete Carroll, and then, you know, who they're keeping, who they're not, all those things. And so I asked him at the end, this is the last question. I got a last question honors. So now that I know it's fresh in your mind. I basically said, you know, hey, like it's fresh in your mind, but did you learn anything from this? Like, is there something you want to change in how you're engaging with your team to get them bought in, or as they're listening to this, and like make sure that they feel good about the direction of your organization? And here is John's answer.
Message about what's going on here. Any reflections? And I know it's right away that this just happened.
Well, I think our support staff, Mo Kelly, you know, Sue, Sam Ramsden, Strick, you know, Dave and his staff. I mean, I love our people, and our people do a great job. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking all the time about, is there something we did? Is there something, you know? But at the end of the day, it's not that. It's just purely business on their end, in my opinion. And you have to look at like that. You can't look at. We all take it personally, you know. I do, but you can't initially. But you can't. You know, it's like, hey, we gotta keep moving forward here. And you know, if we sit there and wallow in our feelings, then we're not going to be doing what's best for the organization. And that's what our job is. What's best for the organization, what's best for Jody and the fans, like every single day.
I took a lot from that. So when I asked him that question, his initial response, and he talks about this a lot, his initial response was about the support organization. Talking about Maurice Kelly, Mo Kelly, who helps with player engagement. Talked about, you know, people that, you know, Eric Kennedy, who does equipment. He talked about the chef, like all the people in the building that create, like for his perspective, the culture in the organization and how great they are. He also, if you remember when Pete was let go, one of the directives to John and to the future was to keep the culture that Pete had helped to create intact. And when John would talk about that, he'd talk about the people in the building. And I think that he may misunderstand what that culture meant. It's not just the people in the building. It certainly is part of it. But it is also the buy-in and the engagement from the players, and the fact that it's a fun place to play and that players want to be here. And my question was like, are you going to do anything differently? And he didn't say he was. He did show some self-reflection of, you know, we always ask, like, did we screw this up? Did we make a mistake? And I think that shows some humility that I don't think a lot of people realize John has. And I want to talk about that in a second, but I think he might be missing a little bit there, because if I'm in his situation, and especially if I'm in Mike McDonald's situation, I'm like, how did I get surprised by this? why am I not spending enough time with two of the most important people in my franchise who I want to secure for a really massive financial commitment that are keys to our on-field performance? How have I not spent enough time with them? How have I not had enough conversations to know what was coming? And in the case of DK Metcalf, we got a little bit of an insight into that maybe they did. Maybe John did at least. But he kind of was holding out hope that they could talk it through and that maybe it was a negotiating ploy. Turned out not to be. With Geno, I got the impression it was a pretty big surprise. And so, yeah, I think that there's more there. I'm going to write a quick thing here. So people that don't think I know about Tevin Jenkins will now know that I know about Tevin Jenkins. Okay. So I think he's got maybe a little bit more to do there in terms of figuring out how to create the culture in the locker room and among the players. But the other piece I'd add to that, which is kind of the opposite, Mike Macdonald is creating his culture. He's creating a team that's going to reflect him. And maybe Geno Smith and DK Metcalf aren't interested. Maybe that's too bad. But Ernest Jones is. Ernest Jones signed a pretty team-friendly deal to be in Seattle. He was in the locker room last year. He could have left. He didn't. He came back. And for, like I said, a really good price. Jaron Reed, he chose to be here. He could have gone somewhere else. He didn't. He came back. Leonard Williams last year. He signed a contract, had his best year. I think he's bought in. Devin Witherspoon speaks glowingly about Mike Macdonald. He's bought in. The NFL PA that did their report card, the coach got an A. Mike Macdonald got an A in his first year ever as a head coach. There weren't a lot of guys that got A's on that report card. So I think it's too far a bridge to cross to say that this is a situation where, they've got a really big problem in the locker room or anything like that. I think this is the last vestiges of the Pete Carroll era in terms of players that maybe get to their third contract in the case of DK. And maybe Pete gave players a lot of space to be kind of who they wanted to be and how they wanted to be. And there were some really awesome parts about that. But there's also, I think, some things that go haywire, especially later in contracts. I think we saw that across the board. Earl Thomas flipping him off, like Richard Sherman. There was a number of things. DK even in Pete's last year, basically saying, completely defying what Pete had told the press about, getting more flags and all that kind of stuff. Pete kind of creates his own monsters, and there's an early part of that where that's great, and then there's a later part of that where I think you pay the piper. And I think Geno and DK may be examples of that. And now Mike Macdonald gets to start fresh. And not easy. It's not going to be easy. But I do feel like there's part of that going on there as well. If you haven't given the show a like, click subscribe. Please do. Got a couple more moments from this John Schneider press conference that I want to play for you all. We just crossed 16,000 subscribers yesterday, which is awesome, and would love to get up to 17 and beyond. But let me queue up for you, because I think all of us are wondering what went on with the Will Fries deal. And this was John Schneider talking about what happened with Will Fries and that negotiation. First of all, he's going to talk about the offensive line. And he's going to talk about Dave. And when he says Dave, he's talking about Dave Pearson, the PR guy, who's been telling him, yes, everybody cares about the offensive line.
As a surprise, surprise.
That's the wrong clip. Sorry, that's the DK clip again. Let's do this clip as I intended to do. All right, sorry guys.
I get it. Dave tells me all the time what's going on out there. Okay, everybody sees it. You know.
Here, let me get back to the right moment so you guys can actually hear him talk about the.
We need to. Look, I get it. Dave.
There yet, but how do you sort of look at that whole thing and where the way the offense is?
Yeah, offensive line definitely. We need to. Look, I get it. Dave tells me all the time what's going on out there. Okay, everybody sees it. You know, we were in on a big time guy that we wanted to bring in and get physical on when you spend that kind of money on a player, and we wanted to visit. Another team didn't want to visit, and they just went ahead and did the deal. So what does that mean? Does that mean you just go ahead and start panicking and throw money at other guys that aren't quite as good? No, you make the smart decisions, the smart, patient decisions. We've made decisions in the past, and usually don't jump in that quick. And we've made some decisions in the past that haven't been the best decisions for the organization because we weren't patient and we panicked. And you pay for that, because we want to be a team that's acquiring all throughout the year, so you can compensate for your deficiencies, whether it's injuries or underperformance at a certain position. So when we get to the trade deadline, we can be saying, okay, yeah, we need a Carlos Dunlap, or we need a Diggy, or you know what I mean. We can be able to fix your team, and you have to be disciplined in your spending. And I get it. Like we all want things right now, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
There's a lot in that clip. And by the way, for people wanting to know about Tevin Jenkins more and about Cooper Kupp, I'll talk about that after I finish with this part of the John Schneider aspect of the show today. But a couple things in there that are, again, coming from the GM's mouth, not from a source. They were in on Will Fries. Now, he didn't say Will Fries, but I think we can all very clearly connect the dot. He wanted them to come in for him to come in for a physical. Another team did not. It was willing to not. And so the guy signed elsewhere. So that's exactly what Bob Condotta reported. This was not about years or money. And so we also have confirmation that John Schneider, who I have criticized significantly for not investing in interior offensive line over the years, not being willing to do it. We had the whole overdrafted and overpaid conversation for a year. He was going to pay. He was going to invest. And that guy, they, in the end, tried to do something that was responsible with this money. And another team decided to use that as an opportunity to snare the guy. So John Schneider, then the other part of this is he said, we have panicked in the past in this situation. And I can almost guarantee you he is referring to the Zach Allen situation where they were targeting Zach Allen as an addition 2 years ago. He decided to go to Denver. Then they, I think he's saying, panicked and took the money they were going to use on Zach Allen and used it on Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones just signed with the Tennessee Titans. It didn't work out. And John, I think, looks at that as a failure on their side and a decision that they shouldn't have made. I want to point that out for a few reasons. One, that's just like, okay, let's connect some dots. But two, John Schneider can come across as arrogant on, how he answers questions. I hear that. I understand that. There's another aspect of John Schneider that I think is less discussed, which is he has time and again showed humility. And he's also shown the ability to recognize, self-reflect that he's made a mistake and try to do better. He's talked about that with drafts and draft strategy. Over the years, there's been a number of different things that they've incorporated. Most recently, really realizing that they were pushing need too much. They were too heavily weighting need, and it was causing them to miss the best players. Since they've made that change, their last 3 drafts have been pretty darn good. And I think this is an example of him saying, look, we have made a mistake in free agency in the past, and we just took the money and we spent it somewhere else, and that was a mistake. It was a panic move, and we're not going to do that again. So I think that's actually growth, and I think it's good to have a GM that's not so arrogant, not so set in his ways, that he is not able to learn from mistakes and adjust and grow. I respect that. So that's that. The one last thing I'm going to play for you on the John Schneider piece. I was less upset about the Will Fries thing for all the reasons I've talked about before. I was like, what in the world with Joe Thuney? This guy's good, and you got this. The Bears got him for a 2026 fourth round pick. Is that surprising? So there's John looking right at me as I'm asking the question, and here was his answer on Joe Thuney. As I said, like, do you even like? Are there times where you don't get a chance to even get in on these deals?
You know, you guys are in on everything. Are there some of these deals that happen without you guys even having an opportunity to get in there and outbid somebody?
Yeah, there's some there's some conversations that are had that, you know, you're kind of like, okay, wait, so, well, you know, I thought you were going to call us back, or, you know what I mean? There's sometimes things just happen that, you know, we always say we want to be in everything, but, like, you know, and Joe's a great player, you know, but, you know, I'm not sure. The surprise was not that it was a fourth round pick, but that it happened that fast.
That could, you know,
So I got from that they would have been in on that, but they didn't get a chance to be in on it. And you can decide that that's the thing to be critical about John with, or you can decide that sometimes things just don't go your way. And I thought that was interesting to me. I interpreted his answer as being he actually doesn't think Joe Thuney is necessarily worth that much more than a 2026 fourth round pick. But I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have potentially beat it if they had an opportunity to get more involved. He's certainly a guy that I would have liked to have had in Seattle. And I think that was a miss. Quite honestly, I think that was a miss. I would also point out that Ryan Poles, who is the GM for the Bears, does have connections with the Chiefs, and it's possible that like that relationship was just like good enough. The same way that the Seahawks, John Schneider did not talk to any other teams other than the Raiders. They have connections with Pete. They knew he wanted him probably the most. That was it. So sometimes relationships drive those deals. A lot of times relationships drive those deals. So I wish the Seahawks could have had a chance to do that. I think we'd be in a much better place as a team, or they'd be in a much better place as a team, but it is what it is. So lots there. I would tell you, make sure you go up to the YouTube channel. I've got the entire press conference from John Schneider, the entire one from Josh Jones, the entire one from Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the entire one from DeMarcus Lawrence that's going viral everywhere. It's all up there. A lot of those were members first, so you got to be club level or higher to get access. So if you haven't upgraded to club level, now's a great time to do it. And you know, that'll get you initial access to some of these, but a lot of good stuff in there. I thought I would watch the whole John Schneider one from beginning to end if I were you. I think watch his body language, watch how he answers questions, listen to all that. So I'll get to Tevin Jenkins, Cooper Kupp, all that stuff in a moment. But I just want to kind of reflect on all that we just heard from Schneider. I think John Schneider's under a ton of pressure. Some of it of his own creation, some of it just of the reality, and some of it of bad fortune. I think that he deserves a ton of skepticism or scrutiny is probably the better word for how he's handled the offensive line over the years. Like, it's undeniable. Like, that is a place where he has really messed things up. I think that he deserves some scrutiny for how he's handled player relationships. Richard Sherman on the way out, Bobby Wagner on the way out, Earl Thomas, you know, like there's been a number of these things that have not been pretty, right? Now Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. And on one hand, I could kind of go off on that. On the other hand, I don't know that that's really the GM's job. The GM's job is kind of to be the steward of the business and the health of the roster. And it's the coach's job to kind of be the player relationship person if there is going to be something like that. And John, to some extent, has to create some amount of buffer between him and players because they're going to do these negotiations and because, it gets acrimonious at times. But I also feel like he's a guy that gets more anger than maybe is really valid. I think he's a guy that has been in Seattle, has moved his family, he had created a home here for 15 years. First GM to help ever get the Seahawks to a Super Bowl win. Has made some of the best moves in franchise history, including, people say it's just the first 3 years. The trade of Russell Wilson was one of the best trades in NFL history. Period. He's made a number of moves that were, I think, pretty good, if not amazing. And he's also, people give Pete so much of the credit, but was part of it too, like a pretty big part of it, of the best era of Seahawks football in franchise history. And I think he's made a really good hire at coach and a bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to rehash everything. But this is a guy that has given a lot to Seattle and a lot to the fan base and a lot to the community. And I think on balance has been much better, has been much more of a good GM than a bad one, and much more of a good guy than a bad one. So I don't know. I would just say, people can feel however they want about it, but I just am sharing my perspective that he's created some pressure on himself, and it's gonna play itself out one way or another. The hate I see for him, I feel like is way out of bounds, personally. I think I've seen GMs that deserve that kind of perspective, like, oh my gosh, the guy with Holmgren, Tim Ruskell. That guy was he was awful at his job. He was a bad dude. He lost a Hall of Famer in Steve Hutchinson because he changed the decision from franchise tagging him to transition tagging him after they had agreed on it with Mike Holmgren. He was just a bad guy and bad at his job. So good riddance to him. That's not John Schneider. So anyway, that's my piece on that. Let's switch gears and talk about, I think we got some super chats. We've also got Tevin Jenkins stuff, Cooper Kupp stuff. So let me get to that here in a second. Before I do, let me get to super chats and pull up some of these. Joey Walker says, my kids were watching Good Morning Football on NFL Network and asked, Dad, isn't that the guy you watch on YouTube every day? So cool. Keep it up. That's funny. Thanks, Joey. Well, I'll have to check that out later. Aziz Rashid says, the selflessness you have devoted to this channel, I see it only with my wife, who is a school teacher with special needs kids. Real heroes, you all. Well, I would not feel comfortable getting compared to a special needs teacher. Honestly, having a son who's autistic, has given me insight into people that work in the disability world. I think they're the best people on the planet. And it's not like people it's this mercy thing, or that's not how I see it. They just literally are the kindest, most loving people in the planet, and they treat people that could easily be mistreated with love and kindness, and gives me hope about the world. So thank you to your wife for what she does. Far, far, far more important than what I do. Corey Hickok gives away 5 Hawkblogger memberships. Thank you, Corey, for doing that. I really appreciate it. Ransom Cornwall gives away 5 Hawkblogger memberships. Thank you, Ransom. Appreciate you for doing it. Yayo Diaz, I'm assuming this is like a sticker or a thanks or something, but thank you for that. Douglas Sears says, earlier we praised Schneider for taking risks, Geno DK on his job security. Does that praise need to be retracted since moving on was not his idea. Yeah, I mean, if you go back to Real Hawk Talk, I think it was Real Hawk Talk, but maybe it was one of the emergency pods. I've lost track. I've been doing so many shows lately, but I was on with Evan Hill and Jeff Simmons, and Evan was like praising John Schneider for like making these moves and like, you know, really resetting things. And I said at that point, even before all the news, like we have all this information, I was like, are we sure he deserves that praise? Because he didn't want these moves to happen. These guys forced these moves to happen. So I am not giving John Schneider credit for trading Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. I will give him credit for, I think, making as good of a pivot from that as you could in getting 5 picks in the first 92 of this draft and getting Sam Darnold, who is probably the closest thing you could find to Geno Metcalf out there. You know, people say, well, why would you want to get better? Of course you want to get better, but those guys aren't available. The way you get better is you draft, and he's going to do that too. He's going to draft a quarterback. I can almost guarantee it. And they'll probably, if that doesn't work out, they'll draft another one next year. But the way to find like a great, truly great franchise quarterback is you got to draft him, you got to develop him, and you got to hit on him. And with Sam Darnold, you know, I think that he is a little bit more of the same. And I think that they're financially committed to him to the point where he's going to be the starter most likely, but they're not committed to the point over the years where if they find someone better that they can't move to him. So that's kind of where things are. And Sam Darnold is 27 years old, and we don't know if he's hit his peak yet. I'm not going to play any of the Sam Darnold press conference. I'll play that another time, or clips of it, but I'll get that up on YouTube as well later today. All right. Yayo Diaz says, love your work. Definitely invited to the cookout. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. I would eat everything there. Right now, I'd absolutely eat everything there. All right. Jacoby says, easily top 5 Hawks podcast coverage. Thanks, B. Top 5, man. Come on, dude. How much farther up do I got to go? Like, why is it not the top? That's the goal. I want to give you guys the best coverage, the best content out there. And that is no slight to anybody else. I just, high standards. Jared says he's been a member for 7 months. And he says, good work, Brian, as always. That is very nice of you, man. Well, thank you for all those super chats. Let's talk about some of the news that broke. Okay. So, catching you up, if you don't already know. Let's talk Cooper Kupp first. So Cooper Kupp has been rumored to come to Seattle, and then there was a, quote, sleeper team. I think Diana Rossini talked about a sleeper team, and that the Cowboys were a sleeper team that might be interested in Cooper Kupp. Okay. And then later he said they're probably a long shot. Okay, whatever. I mean, here's what I think's happening. I think Cooper Kupp wants to sign with the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks want to sign Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp wants probably 14 or 15 million. I think the Seahawks don't want to pay him 14 or 15 million. And so the agent creating this market, trying to drum up interest, and there's been also a report that, let me pull it up. Let me pull up a search here for Cooper Kupp. And I'll get you the exact, I want to make sure I get the exact right tweet. Okay, so this is going to be this. Got to get at least 50 likes, and let's see where that was. All right. There was a report that he was looking for more money than he was going to be able to get, and I want to try to find where that was. All right, this is from Diana Rossini. This was this morning at 5:51 a.m. Cooper Kupp's asking price has been a holdup for a number of the interested teams per sources. Some suitors have not been willing to offer Kupp a $13 to $14 million a year contract. On Real Hawk Talk on Wednesday with Evan and Dana, I said $14 million is what I thought Cooper Kupp would get. I still think he's going to get close to that. I think teams are probably closer to like, I'm guessing some teams were thinking like 8 or 9, given his age and injury situation. I just don't see him signing, like Tutu Atwell signed for $10 million. I just don't see him signing for less than $10 million. I think that's a pipe dream. The Seahawks have the cap space. It doesn't mean they're going to just throw it away for no reason, but I do think it's a money thing right now. Josina Anderson, who has a mixed record, I will say. I don't think it's bad, but I think it's mixed on her reports. This is just as of 8:52 a.m., so 9 minutes ago, says, as of early this morning, my understanding is that the Seahawks are still holding out hope that the hometown connection plays into their favor for Cooper Kupp, per league sources. Kupp was born in Yakima, Washington. Another league source feels like Seattle at least presents the lifestyle choice, in quotes. Additionally, my understanding is the Patriots have interest in Cooper Kupp, but at the right lower price as of this AM per league source. I think this is all lining up with my perspective on what's happening. I think Cooper Kupp wants to come home. I think he wants to play here. I think he wants to play the Rams twice a year. I think that the Seahawks want to bring him here. And it's just about money. It's finding the right price. So I wouldn't say it's a guarantee that he's going to be here, but I bet it's at least a 75% chance Cooper Kupp's going to be a Seahawk. That's my guess. And this is just a matter of the kind of the death rattle of negotiations before they arrive on a number. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's today. Today, maybe tomorrow, but it'll be soon. And if he doesn't come, this is not a crushing blow. It's not a crushing blow. It would be great if he came, but I think there's really good receivers in the draft, and I don't think it's urgent, but it would be fun. I think it would be fun, and I think he'd be a good leader to add into that locker room. I really like Marquez Valdez-Scantling yesterday as well. Awesome press conference with him. Check it out on the channel under player interviews. The guy's like a fashion designer. He talks a lot about how Clint Kubiak unlocked him. A lot of interesting things about his development last year and how Clint Kubiak was the reason he was here. Interesting to point out, I asked DeMarcus Lawrence, if Adam Dirty wasn't here, would you be here? And he said no. He said probably not. MVS, if Clint Kubiak wasn't here, would you be here? Probably not. So your two coordinators are actively attracting players. And what did we just talk about? Well, is there a culture problem here? Do we have the right people in the room? Is Mike McDonald an issue? Is John Schneider? Whatever. You got two guys that want to be here. And it's because they like the people that are here and they like the coaching staff in particular that's here. And I think that's a big deal. I think Adam Dirty is a huge culture creator. Love that guy. If it was up to me, I'd have him on my show every week and we just talk about all sorts of stuff because I think we talk about things around football and not. He's a great dude. I actually think he's not long for Seattle. I think after this next season, when the Seahawks have a top 5 defense and it's just like taking over places, I think people are going to hire Adam Dirty to be a head coach because he's got that in his future. So that's the Cooper Kupp thing. And like I said, I think it is a matter of time. All right. So that is that. Next, Tevin Jenkins. Everybody wants to know about Tevin Jenkins. So let's talk about Tevin Jenkins. I'll say this as well. I have a league source, who has given me the indication that Lucas Patrick the guard that we talked about yesterday that played with the Saints last season with John Benton and Clint Kubiak, will be making a visit to the VMAC as well. So I think that a couple of guards are going to be coming in. The Jenkins stuff is news. And here's what we know about Tevin Jenkins. So let me pull this up and let me get this nice and zoomed in for you all, just like we like it. And I'll get it shown on screen. All right. So here is what we had yesterday. And frankly, is a little bit wrong because I had made Tevin Jenkins a red, and that was clearly premature. So I got to refresh and I got to make this. He had been in a green color, so let's move it back to a greenish color. Tevin Jenkins is a guy that sounds like he's on his way. Lucas Patrick is a guy that I believe, according to my sources, is on his way. So Tevin Jenkins, as you can see here, had a 75.8 pass block grade. That's pretty good. 74.3 run block grade. That's pretty good. And a 70.5 zone run blocking grade. Also pretty good. The question with Tevin Jenkins has never been, is he good? Like, that's not the question. And the question with Tevin Jenkins is, does he love the game? Is he a tough enough player that he is going to play through some injuries? He's only 27 years old. So if he's a guy that works out, certainly could be someone that sticks around a little bit. But as you kind of look through his history, he played 6 games, started 2 as a rookie in 2021. He started 11 games in 2022. He started 11 games in 2023, and he started 14 last year. So he started the most that he started, and I think he was held out of the last game just because he had a number of different injuries. But this is a guy that was drafted in the 2nd round, 39th overall, highly thought of. But again, the questions are, is he a guy you can count on? And is he the kind of attitude that you want to inject in the middle of a young line? I think the Seahawks want to visit to kind of get a better feel. Like, good for them. I don't think this means they're going to sign him, but I think they want to look him in the eye and get an idea of whether this guy is who they want to inject in the middle of a very young line. The other thing that I believe to be true is I think the Seahawks are looking, especially John Benton, are looking for youthful veterans, not necessarily the old Brandon Scherf kind of guys. Maybe, I don't know if Shaq Mason would be in the list, but, you know, I don't think Dalton Risner's on that list, even though he played with Sam Darnold last year. So let me get the Lucas Patrick stuff in there. Sorry, I was caught up with some other things. So let me get the Lucas Patrick stuff up for you guys. So Lucas Patrick, I did this yesterday, so I should just have this in front of me. But the story with Lucas Patrick, again, he played for the Saints last year, and he's 32. He's going to be 32, so he's older. He had a 64 points. Well, no, that's all right. He had a 60.3 pass block grade. He had a 66.3 run block grade, and his zone run blocking grade was get the right. Is this? Let's get run blocking. I'll get you his zone run blocking grade in a second. But this is a guy that they know, and John Benton knows, and they wouldn't have to teach him the system. He could just roll in. He also got some snaps at center last year as well. Whoops. Let me find Lucas Patrick. He had a 68.7 zone run blocking grade. So similar to Tevin Jenkins. So I think these are two guys they're going to look at. I don't think Brandon Scherf's going to be a guy they look at. I don't know about Shaq Mason. I don't think Dalton Risner is going to be on the list. I haven't heard anything about Will Hernandez. So now we're in kind of a watch and wait situation. And like I said, I think the Cooper Kupp thing will break. I wouldn't be surprised if it's today is my best guess, but it could take a little longer, but my best guess it'll just happen today. I think they're trying to push out as much of this stuff to make the Seahawks blink probably and raise their price. But on this news about Tevin Jenkins, I think it's notable because we did have a report to the contrary from Bob Condotta that Tevin Jenkins was not likely to be on the list. I think if he is, I think you're talking a 1-year deal. This is not going to be, I don't think they're going to spend big money. Now, there are other teams that might be in on it. The Bengals have been rumored to be in on it. So who knows? Maybe he gets a bigger deal. But there's a lot of questions about this guy. And I think they're going to want to be really sure they feel good about it before they do it. If they do it, could be kind of encouraging, because if like really the main thing you're worried about him is health and about his attitude or just his love of the game, and if they get enough that they feel like those aren't issues, he's a good player and he's 27. So I talked to Robert Mays about Tevin Jenkins earlier this year. Robert Mays being a Bears fan, I was like, how good is this guy? What do you think? He's like, he's pretty good when he's on the field. That's kind of the story with Tevin Jenkins. So let's see what happens there, and we'll go on from that. Otherwise, I think that's probably it for today. I got to go do my workout and not get sidetracked by a bunch of other things, as I was yesterday. Appreciate all of you. I think I've got maybe some super chats. Nope. Oh, do we have super chats? This one from Alspy. ESPN getting the Hawk blogger bump is huge for them. Yeah, that's funny, man. Chris Clark, good to see the attention the channel. Proud to support you. Thank you for all you do. Well, that's really nice of you, Chris. Thank you. Save the Geese says, about to fly out, but had to watch the live stream. Well, have a safe flight, Mr. Geese. Chris Clark, another 5 Hawk blogger memberships. Thank you so much. And then Jeff Jennings wanted the Lucas Patrick grades. You now have them, Lucas. So thank you for the super chat and prompting me, and I got that done for you guys. Okay. Again, I'll do this one more time because you don't get to do it that often. Thank you all for getting us to 16,000 subscribers. It means a lot. Appreciate it. I'll be back with you tomorrow, hopefully with Jeff Simmons, and we will do Seahawks Saturday. Until then, I'm Brian Emhauser. This has been episode 354 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.